Hello everyone. I have one more video for you guys. This is about a teen cheerleader who was unalive 5 days before Christmas. Let's get into this real quick.
Another shocking story today out of California that finds a 17-year-old cheerleader brutally stabbed to death just days before Christmas and weeks before her 18th birthday. Now come to find out the suspect is actually her ex-boyfriend who's also a teenager. This is the story of 17-year-old Angelina Gonzalez. Her friends and family say she was a cheerleader, a wrestler, a really amazing artist. She did all of this at her high school in Azusa, California. The story begins on Friday, December 20th, when Angelina was going to a cheerleading banquet with some of her friends and members of her squad. Once that wrapped up, she was picked up by her ex-boyfriend. That person is 18-year-old Daniel Rodriguez. He was first reported as an acquaintance of Angelina's, but her friends and family have since come forward saying it was actually her ex-boyfriend. Time goes on after all of this, and Angelina doesn't come home, so her family starts to worry. And her stepdad actually has her location on his phone. So he goes in, tracks it, and realizes Angelina's phone is somewhere he recognizes. It's at the home of Daniel Rodriguez, her ex-boyfriend. So he heads over to that house and finds something completely shocking when he arrives. In fact, crime scene investigators are already there. Crime scene tape is up. There are first responders because it's an active crime scene. Here's what he told local TV stations, quote, "When I got there, there was already crime scene tape up and forensics and all kinds of stuff. And I ran up to the officers like, hey, my daughter's in there. You know, my daughter is in there. I'm trying to find her. She's not home." And that's when they told me, sit aside for a minute. So Angelina's family later finds out that officers had been called to this home at about 10 o'clock that night. They rushed inside and found Angelina inside with stab wounds. She was critically injured, so they rushed her to the hospital, but she was later pronounced dead. At first, investigators didn't tell anyone who the suspect was. Her family already knew, though. The public just didn't. Until Saturday, December 21st, that's when Daniel Rodriguez was arrested, and it wasn't actually that far away from the crime scene that he was taken into custody. Now he's been charged with Angelina's murder, and he's being held on $2 million bond. Following her death, Angelina's family created a GoFundMe page, writing, quote, "On Friday, December 20th, 2024, my baby was taken from us. She was only 17, about to have her 18th birthday on January 7th. She had such a great future ahead of her. She had a heart of gold. She was my perfect, gorgeous angel baby. I don't even have the words to say. I can't even cope. I need her. Our family is devastated. We appreciate all the support and love. Thank you all." Now, this case, it's another life cut far too short. We're going to take a deep dive now with criminal defense attorney Mike Corbanix. Mike, thank you for coming on with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's start with the crime itself. We have a young girl, 17, about to turn 18, in the prime of her life, and she was stabbed. Right away, that jumps out. We have somebody stabbing her, which is a pretty intimate crime, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. That's just that kind of crime just seems like one that whenever there's a knife or something involved, and I have no science to back this up, but it just seems like that's from an emotional breakdown of some sort, where but something was anticipated if you brought a knife with you, that maybe what you were proposing wasn't going to be agreed to.
And always what I think about if there's some sort of stabbing death is usually it's more than one stab wound. So it's the person has to physically stab the victim, take it out, stab them again, sometimes upwards of dozens of times. Unclear in this case as of right now, but I always think, okay, they stabbed them one time, this person's still alive. They could back it up and say, wait, I made a mistake. But to me, it seems like they doubled down and were like, hey, we really want this young girl to be murdered.
I think that is a very good point, but also I think sometimes it is when you lose control of yourself and your anger and your frustration, you just can't stop what you're doing, and you just go into it into such a way that you've lost your mind, for lack of a better term.
People sometimes use the phrase snapped. We have that entire TV show Snapped where people just see red and all of a sudden they're committing murder. Do you think this is something the defense may bring up, that potentially the suspect in this case snapped?
Absolutely, it's something I think you'd have to look at very carefully, especially since the age, I don't know the age of the alleged defendant in this matter, but this was someone 17 turning 18, so they're basically high school kids. And to have something like this occur, especially so close to a holiday and things of that nature, it just seems there would have to be some evaluation to effectively represent someone to see if there is any mental issues that need to be addressed.
I'm glad that you brought this up. It was right in the wake of Christmas, Hanukkah, the holidays when people are supposed to be spending time with their families, and this specific family just has to deal with an unimaginable tragedy. I wanted to talk a bit more about the suspect, though. I've seen some reports that he was an acquaintance of our victim in this case, but then I've also seen reports that he was her ex boyfriend. Does this matter which it is, the ex boyfriend or the acquaintance?
Well, I think it sounds like it would matter, but obviously there was some sort of relationship. If it was an acquaintance or an ex-boyfriend, there was a relationship where they were familiar with each other, and that would basically work in the government's favor in the prosecution to show that there was some sort of preconceived notion of what they were going to do, and this was an intentional act, especially since there was a knife involved. So it's not like you punch somebody, you got a weapon on you, and you use that weapon, and that goes to showing an intent of committing a murder.
I'm sure that the prosecution would want to take a deep dive into the relationship between the victim and the suspect in this case, and if they were in fact in this romantic relationship. How would they go about doing that? Looking through texts and call logs, maybe interviewing friends and family to see if there were any red flags?
Absolutely, and that's, being an old lawyer, it shows how technology is different the way things happen. When I was a prosecutor, nobody had cell phones and things of that nature, but you really can find very strong evidence, especially on text messages and things of that nature, because the more angry someone has, the less they think about what they're writing, and that shows more the intent and the anger that could have been another element of the intent of murdering someone.
Talking about cell phones, they kind of play a large role in this case. Angelina's family was concerned when she didn't show up at home. So they used Find My Friends or a similar app on their phones to track her phone, went to this home, and apparently came there to find the crime scene tape. There had already been the murder had already occurred. They came there and found it. I mean, that to me is really tough, even just to stomach. What do you make of all of that?
That's devastating for parents, and it just really, it really is something that would devastate them because you're not sure what happened. You have a cell phone, at least you're able to locate it, and then when you go there to see police surrounding the area, it's just got to be something that really just breaks you down.
Now, the suspect in this case has a $2 million bail. That is a wild, very large number, potentially justifiable, but I'm wondering why they would put this giant number for bail as opposed to just denying bail completely.
Well, that is a good question because I don't know exactly what this is in California, so I'm not really sure how the bails work there, but there could be the sense that this was more of a reckless act as opposed to an intentional act. So that could be a question there because we always forget when we discuss sort of the facts potentially is the defendant has a presumption of innocence and is not guilty until found guilty or pleads guilty.
That's really important to remember in these cases because we oftentimes are reporting what investigators tell us. This is the suspect. This person committed murder, but as of right now, this suspect is innocent until proven guilty. So I wanted to talk to you about the defense side of things. What sort of defense do you think his team could bring forth?
Well, there could be a number of things. I mean, we really don't have a lot of the facts here, but number one is always the mental health issue. Number
Yeah.
two is, was this something where he felt threatened and this was self-defense? And what occurred here? It was at, I believe, his house. It's not as like he went to her house to commit this. So there are a number of questions that need to be investigated and looked into to see what is a viable defense, and there could be potential many things that could be looked at.
Wondering about the opposite side of things, the prosecution. I know you pointed out we're still in the early stages. This is less than a week since this tragic crime occurred. But I know that the prosecution already brought charges. I'm sure that they're going to bring forward a lot more information. Do you think they have a strong case?
Well, the fact that you have someone who's dead, someone who's found, I think, a day later, so there had to have something that connected, other than the address of who committed it. So it's very difficult to say at this point in time because there is a lot of investigation that still needs to be done, and we don't know if this person admitted to this, if what he said to the police when he was arrested, things of that nature, or what exactly caused this confrontation.
Now, we know that there's a lot of discovery in this case. It's something that we hear a lot in almost all of our cases because there's a lot of information that goes into every case. But in this case, they're talking about lots of discovery. What would all of that look like?
Well, I'm sure there'll be a lot of looks at cell phones, things of that nature, and that takes quite a bit of time, text messages. They'll be also looking for location monitoring as to where the alleged defendant in this
I'm
case
gonna cut this
was.
off right here.